In terms of paradigm for peace, we need an enormous shift from third facet physical tools to first and second facet mental and legal tools. And we need a foreign policy that will look at the positive and the negative motivations on all sides of conflict. So we don't have this black and white thinking of good versus evil. We need a foreign policy that will seek to resolve conflict rather than take sides and arm one against the other. And we need a foreign policy that will address each of these roots of violence precisely instead of using this clumsy, lump solution of war. So how do we get there? Well, as peace activists, we have first facet, second facet, and nonviolent third facet solutions we can use. I wanted to recommend about 10 first facet and 10 second, so I'll go through them very quickly. The first one, first facet solutions use mental tools to develop the mind so that, in line with Buckminster Fuller's quote, we can relate to others with love and relate to truth with love instead of trying to control others and control the truth. And the first suggestion I have is the one I mentioned on the boat last night, which is to, as much as possible, replace the antagonistic debate with cooperative dialogue. And in a debate, you have one side trying to beat the other, which is verbal war. To me, it's a microcosm for what's wrong with international relations today. And in cooperative dialogue, you have all sides working together as partners trying to solve a problem, and you state your own opinions clearly and strongly, but you sincerely try to get inside the other's shoes. And I think the only way to sincerely get inside the other's shoes is to have their thoughts and feelings while you're thinking of yourself as a good person. Otherwise, if you try to do it, you're going to be sarcastic. The cooperative dialogue, you look at strengths and weaknesses together. The second recommendation I would have is just to raise awareness of the importance of the underlying psychology, because certain feelings, such as aggressive feelings of hateful superiority, can be occurring on different levels of society simultaneously. And I think the person, say the Muslim, who wants Islam to rule the world, that small percentage of them who think that way, they might be the same person who also tells men you should beat your wives into submission, or it might be the same Muslim who dominates other Muslims within his terrorist group. So it's that problem, and if you could address that non-violently at a local level, it would be much more effective than addressing it internationally with a war. If you address it non-violently, the problem of hateful superiority, you can solve the problem on all levels. The same with, I was reading former Prime Minister of Israel, Golda Meir. Apparently she thought of Palestinians as non-existent, as fleas. But she also thought of Ashkenazi Jews, who have ancestry from Eastern Europe and Germany, as superior to Sephardic Jews, with their ancestors from Spain and North Africa. So it was that same feeling, and instead of having the international war, just try to solve the problem of hateful superiority and where it comes from. The third point is to be aware of these psychological patterns that I mentioned earlier, and one I'll go into a little more. It's Gordon Allport's prejudiced personality. This personality has several traits, including tendencies towards black and white thinking, faulting others and not oneself, reduced empathy, preoccupations with superiority and inferiority, clinging to past solutions. And Allport finds that these personalities can be well developed even by age 5. And in the homes from where these prejudiced personalities come, the themes of obedience, punishment, criticism loom large, and a relationship of power rather than love prevails, and there's an underlying threat orientation. So I think it's important to look at the child raising also, although you could adopt a prejudiced personality, I think, even as president, because you associate these traits with past presidents who are all that way, and you think, oh, that's how a president's supposed to be. My fourth point is really pay attention to the quantity and quality of love for children. I think there are many cultural habits that cloud our ability to see that we're not giving children as much love as we could, even in guiding them positively, how to behave. Instead of scolding them to stay on the sidewalk, teach them positively and in a loving way. And also to teach them in a positive way how to relate to others without the scolding. Fifth point is, I mentioned this in the discussion, honestly consider the positive and negative effects of school, because both exist and for different types of people. And one is, what is school teaching children about past and current wars? And two, what does the system of school do to children's capacity for inner peace and for society's potential for peace? Like if the child has to go to school 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, have several hours of homework afterwards, in an environment that's very negative for many of them, what does that do to them? Sixth point is create and support programs for friendships to reduce alienation and prejudice. I'm going to be brief here. 7 is develop cooperative negotiation skills, not this power-based negotiation where, oh, we're going to try to bomb Russia so we have diplomatic leverage over them. That's not real diplomacy when you're trying to get leverage over somebody. You'd want to work with them and cooperate and have negotiation that's based on what I referred to earlier as the nurturant model, where the parties are equal and you're cooperatively trying to solve problems. And 8, I mentioned on the vote, was improve the work culture. I said how in Bush at War by Bob Woodward, there were amazingly dysfunctional habits going on in these foreign policy meetings where people were being excluded or intimidated or they were censoring themselves. In fact, there was one meeting, Bush learned that people were having doubts about this plan to invade Afghanistan. And he heard they were having doubts. So he called the meeting and he said, "We're not having any doubts, are we? I just want to make sure." And then, so nobody said anything. And the weird thing is, the author, not just the author reported that some of the people in the meeting reported Bush as being especially strong that day, like really good. And I don't think that was a good example of leadership. They should have learned about the doubts. 9 is develop the media to search for the length, width, and depth of truth, because the media really could be playing a hero's role here. They could be offering, instead of all the grisly details of the problems, they could be offering to the audience a whole array of solutions to think about. And they could be looking at positive and negative motivations on all sides. And my 10th first facet solution is to create textbooks, dramas, skits, interactive museums of peace to encourage people to think about nonviolent alternatives to war. Now, the second facet solutions deal with legal tools to change policies. And the first one I'd mention is, sum it up? Oh, I have to sum it up. Okay. All right, these two, I'll just say 2 things instead of 10. Because we live in a secular society with a secular religion, we need to have secularism, which means separation of government, not just from religious organizations and ideology, but separation of government from the domination of secular organizations and ideology. And I'm referring here especially to the weapons industry, oil and natural gas, construction companies, banks. They should be separated from dominating foreign policy, elections, campaigns. And the last, I would suggest changing voting formulas also. So in some countries, you have a first and second preference you can give. And then votes are reallocated. I won't explain it now, but that would give third parties a better chance because people wouldn't be afraid of losing their vote. And the last thing is, I'll say states' rights. If the national government isn't going to abide by the Constitution or international treaties, then it's up to the states to protect their civilians and their civilians' taxes from being used to support a hostile foreign policy. And in Dave's book, he mentions that treaties are supposed to be upheld, it says it in the Constitution, by all the states' leaders also. So if we are making progress at the national government, I would try the state. Even if we can get one state to stand up, it would be progress. Thank you.